This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
The agricultural markets digested a deluge of data this past week from USDA. Hello folks, welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio this week, but we'll be hearing from Max Armstrong in just a little bit. Over this past week, we saw farmers from across the country gather in San Juan, Puerto Rico for the annual meeting of the American Farm Bureau Federation. It was held in San Juan for the first time, and President Zippy Duvall kicked things off, celebrating the grassroots nature of Farm Bureau and the fact that in this past year, Farm Bureau members sent more than 38,000 messages to legislators and regulators talking about the issues that they're confronting on their operations each year. Also, the group heard from Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack with several important messages. He mentioned that USDA will be rolling out $88 million into 21 different trial programs to encourage the production of fertilizer here in the United States. There was also an announcement that $12 million will be awarded in grants to meat and poultry processing facilities as a way to add competition to the meat market space. There was another big announcement. American Farm Bureau Federation and John Deere announced a memorandum of understanding that they believe will allow more farmers across the country the opportunity to repair their John Deere equipment. It's going to allow farmers to access diagnostic tools and codes that will allow them to make repairs on their machinery without necessarily having to take it in to a dealer. The details on a lot of these pieces of information will be coming out over the next several weeks as these Farm Bureau folks return to the mainland and get back to work on their operations. We'll be keeping track of how this MOU unfolds and how it could impact the rest of the ag economy. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. And now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week as we break down all of the data that was released from Uncle Sam is Dr. Matt Roberts of Terrain. Mr. Roberts, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
You know, this past week we saw one of the most watched reports in the commodity market come out. The corn industry was watching very closely. Matt, what were some of the adjustments USDA made to this year's corn crop?
So the January reports are always closely watched because they contain the final yield and harvested acre estimates for this harvest that we just went through. So it's always closely watched. This year, what we saw in corn, 1 bushel increase in yield, in estimated yield, 1.6 million acre decrease in harvested acres for a net of a 200 million bushel decline in total production.
That's got to be a fairly bullish figure for this market. Did USDA adjust their other demand sources in accordance?
They did, and let me be clear. When I say this, I don't think that they operate with little green visors in a smoke-filled room, but I think they've been waiting to really cut exports. Corn exports have been slow all year. Everybody's been watching it, and a 200 million bushel decline in total production is a good time to be able to come over, cut exports without it disrupting the market so much. So there was a 150 million bushel cut in exports. Now, by my models, I think we probably need to see another 200 million or more bushels cut from exports, or we need to see a lot faster pace for the remainder of the year. But yes, that was the big headline cut. They also made some adjustments to feed and residual, also to food use. And that totals up to roughly offset that 200 million bushel decline.
Interesting. So USDA didn't make any adjustments to the ethanol category.
They didn't. And that is an area that, again, analysts have been watching. We've seen over the past 6 weeks relatively weak ethanol grind, not the demand we're accustomed to. So there is some sentiment that maybe we need to see those numbers come down in future reports. But I think this is a much smaller adjustment than this export adjustment that's still kind of hanging out.
As you think about that export adjustment and global corn producers, I know this report takes a look at that, and South America is getting some attention. Did Argentinian corn production get adjusted due to their drought?
It did not, or certainly at least not enough. And this is always the difficulty when you are the USDA, when you're putting these reports out. So yesterday, or earlier this week, in the early part of the week, the Argentinian Grain Exchange came out. They released their forecast. Now, Argentina's been in a very significant drought. We know that. We've been hearing. They have been 7 days away from getting rain for the last 35 days. Just nothing materializes. And so the Argentinian Exchange came out and cut production, their own estimates of 200 to 350 million bushels.
Wow.
Beneath what the USDA is projecting in this report that was also released this week. That report from Argentina came out the day before the WASDE report. So still some more cuts that are going to have to come out of Argentina.
All right, we'll be watching for that. And Matt, in the Brazilian side, do we have a sense of their corn crop, the Safrinha corn crop, quite yet?
We don't have it quite yet. So far, it does look good. There's not yet enough to go on to think that we're going to see much adverse. We're expecting a large corn crop, and the market seems to be, and I think that's also contributing to this weakness out of our exports.
I think it is as well. We'll be back. We're going to pick more into these market details with Dr. Matt Roberts when we return. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. And we're back talking markets with Dr. Matt Roberts of Terrain. And Dr. Roberts, you mentioned we also got the wheat seedings report out earlier this week. A lot of conversation about the poor quality of the winter wheat across the country, but it sounds like we've got a lot of it.
We do have a lot of it. I mean, we have obviously all fall, late summer, fall, significant drought in the Great Plains. Conditions poor, planting conditions poor, but that led to an $8.59 Kansas City base crop insurance planting price. And that drives a lot of that wheat. Further, when you think about, sure, we have high input, high fertilizer costs, but most of that fertilizer isn't put on until the spring, after we've already seen what emergence looks like, what that early development looks like. So it's really putting in the seeds, waiting and seeing through the winter. So we're up about 2% in total winter wheat planting, another 750,000 acres. As you said, condition is still poor, but as one of my colleagues at Terrain recently discovered in his report, is until you get into late February, early March, those wheat condition ratings don't have any discernible impact on yield. Right now, we're just waiting. We'll see what comes up.
All right, we've got to get close to that springtime weather system before we start to get concerned. In the meantime, Matt, we're watching this global soybean market. It did appear that soy was the biggest response from a market perspective to Thursday's USDA reports. What did USDA do with this total U.S. soybean crop?
Total crop cut by 70 million bushels, which is significant, particularly when we're already at tight levels. We came into the report with 220 million bushel ending inventory estimate. And so you say, oh, well, total production down 70 million bushels. That really matters. And that comes out of a 0.7 of a bushel cut in yield and a 300,000 acre cut in harvested acres. So the combination, again, 70 million bushels, but sort of similar to what happened in corn, we saw this as an opportunity, or the USDA saw this as an opportunity to make some adjustments on the demand side. They cut exports 55 million bushels. Now this is ostensibly because they expect the harvest coming out of Brazil to be record, a lot of export competition, and we're not seeing a lot of sales out of the United States to China over the past 6 to 8 weeks. Having said that, we were on pace. We were broadly on pace by my models to meet that previous USDA forecast. So that cut was a little unexpected, honestly, to me. And then some minor cuts in the residual, in kind of that leftover they can't find. So net 10 million bushel cut to ending inventories. But in a market that's this tight, that's a big cut.
It is. And so where does this put the soybean market in your perspective heading into this first quarter of 23?
It really sets a nice tone. Now, we're looking at South America. We're waiting to see what happens. We're waiting to see what Brazil, how it finishes. Have to remember, Brazilian soil does not, by and large, hold moisture, particularly as you go up into Mato Grosso. It's very sandy. So those conditions can change a lot. Transportation can change a lot. But what this does is it tightens up the domestic market. It does create a very nice bullish tone, I think, over the next 4 to 6 weeks in corn, in beans. Now, is this going to be a dollar move in beans, $1.50? No. But it is a nice addition to the sentiment, 50-cent, 30-cent move, 50-cent move, that's going to give some new opportunities.
All right, like to see some opportunities presented by the market. We've been talking with Dr. Matt Roberts of Terrain. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. Combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability. Why, yes, he was like a kid at a candy store. There was far too much at that Consumer Electronics Show for Chad Colby to review in 1 week's report last week, so he shares some more products this week.
Have you ever attended the CES show in Vegas? This is put on by the Consumer Technology Association, and this past year it was 70% bigger than 2022. They had people there from over 140 countries to see the latest in technology. This included 3,200 vendors, and check that out, a wireless LED TV. They also have wave monitors. That's something very new. Everywhere you went in this show, it took your mind in a different place. And yeah, definitely more on the consumer side. Some of these items make you think, man, do we really need that? But I can tell you this, some of this stuff is already here. You know, using your oven or your washer and dryer, those kind of things from your phone, that's certainly here. There's always technology around cameras and smartphones. And our friends at John Deere did a good job helping to educate people about agriculture, and they used this venue to announce a couple new products. Speaking of being efficiency and using technology, they showed their Exact Shot new program to put starter fertilizer or whatever type of product right on your seed. And of course, they also unveiled their brand new concept electric excavator, which quite honestly is not that far away. But everywhere you went around this show, you got to see that next generation, whether it's wearable technology or robots that kind of make you wonder, do we really need that? I think it's important to also realize at a show like this, they always claim about a third of these products never make it to market. But I can tell you this, some of these already have a market, like this robotic pool cleaning robot. And what about this? Automation in your yard. I think that's a great thing as well in certain applications. The automobile industry uses this to showcase new concept vehicles as well, like this electric Ram pickup. And they also use it to get some feedback from people about what that next generation of vehicles could potentially look like. And as you can see in this vehicle right here, this one's a little bit of a push of the imagination. Lots of screens. The user interface is completely different. Again, what an amazing show. If you've never been to it, I certainly recommend attending this show. It happens every single year. And I can tell you this, I can't wait for the next one. It's one of my, honestly, favorite shows of the year.
Well, some of those things you see at that show in Vegas just do not get to the marketplace, but many, we trust, will be showing up in our homes, our offices, our automobiles, our tractors. So stay tuned, Chad Colby would say. Maybe in Ray Brownfield's office, too. Welcome back here, old friend. It's good to see you again.
Thank you much.
From the offices of Land Pro LLC. I have to ask you about the land situation. I noticed some of the agriculture economists are cautioning producers about that downside risk this year from interest rates alone. And one of the things they're saying is asset devaluation could be a concern here because of these high interest rates and perhaps going higher. We don't know. What's your feeling on that?
Well, technically, I think they could be correct, but I'm not sure realistically they are as of yet. Interest rates certainly are higher levels, but we've not seen any reduction at all in demand for farmland. Now, will there be in the remainder of 23? We don't know. The first quarter started already. We already see some really good land values and some of the auctions that have taken place. Some land nearby went for $16,500 just yesterday. That's a good price. So will it have an effect? It could be. We think we've topped out. We probably think we've topped the market. We're not to 30,000 here in Iowa and some places, but that's an anomaly in many cases anyway. But I think we're steady. I'd say right now, I think that there's still demand for land. It doesn't come on the market very often. There's cash out there. We've had 3 really good farming years, if you think back, with the COVID payment from the government, also before that the tariff payment. So there's a lot of cash pursuing land. So I think it's going to remain relatively strong for a period of time. Maybe towards the end of 23, we'll see maybe some change.
And those outside investors, we saw a report just the other day, some football players investing in farmland. When you look at the performance in the equity markets, they're looking for alternatives, no doubt.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I was saying that I think on the Standard & Poor's just for 22 was down 25%. And that's phenomenal when you look at the instability and the volatility in the marketplace, where farmland has been up at least 28%, some areas even greater than that. Will it stay that way? Probably not, but still a very steady investment.
You don't see much downside risk then? Not a huge amount of downside risk, you're saying?
No, I don't. I don't see the 1980s. If people refer back to that, I don't see that at all. There's very little debt out there. If there is, it's minimal. So I don't see a crash. I see maybe some smaller reduction, particularly maybe in the lesser quality farmland will go first probably. You'll see that come down some, but I don't see the high quality going very far down at all.
You work in that farmland management area. Are you concerned about increasing interest rates?
Well, I think going back to leasing, and that's what we've completed our leases now. We didn't have any issues with that. What we're trying to do is make our leases so that everybody has a good shot, and what we're doing now is that we have a base rent on cash rent with a flex. The flex deals with Chicago Board of Trade as well as the actual yield, and the farmers seem to like that. They think that's really fair. In the good years, they're going to do well. In the years that not, then we'll be what we're going to be, but I haven't seen an issue.
In the past, you've made a distinction between that fine quality farmland and some that isn't nearly as productive. How is that other part of the portfolio looking?
Well, it was, again, this year was the best year the lesser quality ground has had. The corn yields were unbelievable. So those did well. So that carries over into this year in 23. What will happen this year, I don't know in that regard, but I think overall it's been good. I'm pretty optimistic, to be honest with you.
It's good to see you.
I have to be that way.
Yes, you are. Thank you, sir, for coming in to join us. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Ray Brownfield, Land Pro LLC, based in Oswego, Illinois.
This is a very busy time of year for folks involved in the ag industry. Meetings, conferences, conventions all happen this time of year. And in Oklahoma City, the 3rd annual Cattlemen's Congress has just come to a close. Joining us now for an update on that event and other issues that are impacting Oklahoma, we go now to Ron Hayes of Radio Oklahoma Ag Network. And Ron, thanks for joining us this week.
You betcha, Mike. Glad to be here.
Let's talk about this Cattlemen's Congress. Ron, this was the 3rd annual event held down in Oklahoma City, and how were the crowds this year?
The crowds were really exceptional. You know, year one, 2021 or 2021 was the first year. That was the middle of the pandemic. A lot of other shows had to shut down because of safety concerns and worries by their governments around them. That's when Cattlemen's Congress kind of stepped in and said, hey, the beef cattle industry needs something at the start of the year. That's what that was provided. It went over very well. Last year, it wasn't a fluke. That was basically what we learned. And now year 3, it looks like this thing is being set up for probably a long-term run based on the numbers that we got here in 2023.
Now, Ron, Cattlemen's Congress, 3 years in, is still a fairly new event in the beef world. Can you tell us, what do exhibitors show there? What is on display at Cattlemen's Congress?
Well, this is everything beef cattle. In other words, this is they tout this as an event that is put on by cattlemen for cattlemen, and it's all about trying to bring together the beef cattle industry across North America. Truly a national event, in fact, international, as we had 42 states with exhibitors coming in from 42 states this year, 4 Canadian provinces, over 8,600 entries, and when you add up the extra numbers on those entries, when the pens of 3 and the pens of 5 and some carloads as well, right at 10,000 animals actually showed up over the last couple of weeks, really since the first of the year. They had 28 breeds of beef cattle on display and actually in competition in the shows. A total of 19 sales on the fairgrounds, over $5-6 million worth of sales in that regards of genetics and live animals. And then there are about another 5 or 6 sales in conjunction with Cattlemen's Congress off the fairgrounds. And all told, the numbers come up close to $10 million worth of sales here thus far in 2023 from these sales.
Wow, those are some big numbers, Ron. And my next question, I think I know where you're going to go with it, but I'm going to ask, how were attendees feeling about the economics of the industry? I've got to imagine they're fairly confident if they're spending that kind of money.
Well, I think there's a lot of optimism. The concern obviously coming off of 2022 and the herd liquidation that was very much a reality because of dry conditions, especially in our part of the country. Right across the heartland from Texas all up into Nebraska, even the Dakotas have had their share of drought in 2021 and now especially over this last year in 2022. But there's been enough rain come in the fall and up to about the first of the year in these areas that guys are pretty optimistic as far as they're hopeful anyway that we'll be able to get some grass this year and move forward. A lot of folks wanting to invest in genetics, though, improving their herds where they possibly can. And this isn't just seed stock, producers trading cattle. This is a lot of commercial producers came in from this region, buying bulls, buying other genetics here at Cattlemen's Congress.
Ron, you mentioned the herd liquidation, and earlier in 2022 when we spoke, you were seeing that happen quite a bit across Oklahoma. As winter has moved on, are producers just holding steady, preparing for 23?
At this point, we're kind of in that holding pattern. The numbers that we saw as far as heading to the local sale barns and other liquidation of these slaughter cows, these mama cows that turned into slaughter cows, they basically are, we got a lot of those probably liquidated. The older cows, the ones that maybe were a little less congenial as far as their working with their owners. Those are the animals that were sent to town, and we're now waiting to see if we can get some moisture, get that grass growing in late March, early April of this year. If we do that, I think a lot of guys are going to hold on. They're going to try to hold on to that point. They've had to buy some high-priced hay to get through the winter, but they're ready to do that, especially if we can look forward to maybe some grass in the springtime of 23.
Maybe some grass, and of course those crops will be going in the ground. Ron, crop producers in Oklahoma optimistic for this next year?
Well, again, the prices are such that they're hopeful. I mean, we did not have a good season. We had about a half a wheat crop last May, June. We had about a half a cotton crop in the western parts of our state. Soybeans and corn, we don't grow a lot of those crops, but again, they were well down. Grain sorghum also down. The winter wheat crop has gone into the ground. We got a lot of folks that dusted in the 2023 crop this last fall. We got some moisture in that late October, November, early December time period, enough that we got a good bit of the wheat up to stand, and it's kind of in a holding pattern right now. We'll need more moisture to make a crop, but at least we did get it in fairly successfully, I think, in the fall of 22.
All right, we'll be watching. There's a lot to unpack here as 2023 moves forward. Ron Hayes of the Radio Oklahoma Ag Network, thank you so much for joining us and filling us in on the events of Cattlemen's Congress.
Thanks, Mike.
And folks, stay with us. Later on in the program, we're going to be taking a look at the farm dog across the country. American Farm Bureau each year highlights those dogs that do great work on farms across the country. Later on in the program, we're going to meet Tough, this year's winner.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Welcome back to this weekend's This Week in Agribusiness. Mike will be back a little bit later on, and he'll share with you the story of the Farm Dog of the Year. So many of us have stories about that one dog back in our youth, or perhaps not too many years ago. Some interesting stories about canines on the farm. Speaking of dogs we love, here's Willie Vogt joining us from Farm Progress. Willie, it's great to see you as we're getting ready to get together at something called the Farm Futures Summit. You'll be there, and I want your fans to know that they can come see you.
Yes, I will be there. I'll be there for the boot camp as well as the Farm Future Summit, and never been introduced like that before. Thank you, Max.
Well, hey, I know you so well. You know, one thing
Yes.
that I've thought about in the past at the Farm Future Summit, it sort of has a classroom feel, and yet it's so comfortable. It's a great opportunity to learn and absorb so much in such a short period of time from people who are such good presenters.
Yeah, it is. And every year, Mike Wilson, who organizes this event, works really hard to bring in a diverse amount of speakers that cover a lot of topics. And I'm excited this year to add top people like Jolene Brown, who can talk on the family side of the farm, some issues we haven't dealt with as much in the past. We also have succession issues. We also have obviously the marketing stuff with Matt Bennett and folks like that. Jacqueline Holland is going to talk about resetting your budget. The one I'm also interested in watching is, of course, our friend Howard Buffett discussing his interaction with Ukraine and Ukrainian farmers. I think you and Howard will do a wonderful job, and I'm looking forward to hearing that. That's going to be great.
Howard, whatever it is he devotes his attention to through his foundation, becomes passionate about it, whether it's been conservation, whether it's the agriculture immigrant workforce issues that he has devoted attention to, hunger problems as well. He is passionate about this, and his foundation has done a significant amount of work since, last February in that war-torn nation. And just before he heads back over for his 5th trip since the war started, he'll be with us at Farm Future Summit. And as you say, it'll be a unique opportunity to give us some insight into a country that's going to continue to play a significant role in the world grain scene, right?
Absolutely. And I actually ran into a Ukrainian farmer when I was out west last week, and he had met Howard and just was excited to have done that and knows that we're paying attention. I think that's a big thing too. When you're in the middle of that kind of strife, you don't think anybody's paying attention, and we are. And I think that's important. The other thing about the summit I think people need to realize is what I call the interaction time. You also have the speakers, Dr. David Cole, I should have mentioned, and then panels you and I are moderating that get into the nitty gritty on some hot topics. But the other thing is when you go on break, watching the farmers interact with the sponsors, it's exciting what they learn about their business outside of what we bring to the table.
You know, one thing that I think about with the Farm Future Summit, it gives the producer quite often early warnings about things to come. And a perfect example was the discussion last year about interest rates. And you look at that larger than life issue now, when we have all of these costs that are piling up for producers to produce a crop, and how significant those are as they all come together, and the cost of money is one of them. I remember Cole warning about that last year.
Yeah, and everybody has, oddly, in the last couple of years in the summit, we have brought up interest rates because I think the people that really watch, the economists we work with, really do watch those numbers and had just been kind of waiting for the Fed because knowing that inflation was coming back. And when you look at what happened in the money that was going into the market during the pandemic, it's logical if you follow economics that more money brings inflation straight up.
In this learning season, it's a great opportunity to learn and to interact with other growers, as you point out. Willie, we look forward to seeing you at Coralville, right there by Iowa City. Give us the website where folks can go to get all of the information and sign up.
farmfuturesummit.com.
That's easy enough. See you there, pal.
Yep.
Have a good week.
Thanks a lot, sir. See you later. Willie
Vogt there joining us, and he will be among those at the Farm Futures Summit at Iowa City. Coralville, actually. Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, now it's time to take a look at the weather. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us now. And Greg, the story this past week, it has seemed in the weather world, has been the onslaught of moisture out west. Do you think that's going to continue?
It's been just one after another direct hits, plural, into California. And at times, the northern extent of this onshore flow has caught parts of the Pacific Northwest. We think with time it's going to be into this part of the country, moving beyond into the mid to late stretches of the month of January. But it's been even-keeled so far and beneficial, obviously, with snowpack in mind. And areas to the east to the southeast of this cold onshore flow of moisture, pretty mild. The air comes down off the Rockies, moderates some, of course. Prior to that, we've had a lot of of snow and still continue to have a lot of snow. That's a good thing across Montana and the Dakotas. But the cold air is beginning to retool the past week or so. It's been to eastern Canada reaches, beginning to retrograde on westward with time. You'll see that in the longer range coming up in the broadcast. As the week wears on, one weather system skedaddles to the east and southeast. New snows, a little mixture of rain and pretty mild air, just seasonal cold around the Black Hills and points east and south. We're keeping an eye on the very cold air through the Canadian Prairie. New moisture comes ashore into the Pacific Northwest, including mountain snow. 25 billion gallons of moisture, of rain and snow. That's the water equivalency. Matter of fact, now if you melt down the snowpack across the Sierra, 25 inches worth of moisture. It is a trip off here. I mean, the Mother Nature, the atmosphere works faster than the models and the data that La Nina may be beginning to wind on down. In any event, here's a system offshore moving into California, complete with thunder last week and severe weather. The main body of the storm, Four Corners area, and we continue high and dry, fairly mild as well across the worst drought areas, unfortunately, the southern plains. In the Denver area, yeah, more snow back in the forecast. We again have seen some drought improvement from the Denver area on westward in this winter season. Note the ridging and the flow like this here with sinking air, drier time. We'll need it with those streams and rivers across the valleys of California as the next storm system winds up, and there will be significant moisture from showers and thunderstorms to snow the mountains on the central and southern plains and points westward.
Well, Greg, let's move to that central part of the U.S. Does any of that energy make its way to the Corn Belt?
Yes, it's been an active weather pattern and primarily rain, mind you. You wanted drought improvement. It's coming at a price without any substantial frost and freeze on the ground, and the end result is a lot of mud on Mama's kitchen floor across the Corn Belt. And here's one weather system, the cold air beginning to retool across the polar regions and the Canadian Prairie. It's coming southward and westward in the next 2 to 3 weeks. One weather system on by, another one on its heels. The cold air begins to settle on southward. A little better look and feel of wintertime, where it's been primarily rain across a good part of the eastern Corn Belt. New snowpack for the western complex and into the upper Midwest. The core of the cold late next week across the Dakotas and southern Canadian Prairie. Note the trough. It is the start of a continuation actually of an active weather pattern, but a different moisture type with time as temperatures come on down from these almost record-setting levels in the eastern Corn Belt. Showers, thunderstorms, central and southern plains, a little rain, snow in northern New Mexico, the mountain areas, wet weather into the Delta and southeastern states. Yeah, you can get severe weather like we've seen last week across Kentucky, past couple of weeks into the southeastern plains. And again, some additional moisture opportunities in the heart of the drought areas in the central and southern plains later in the week.
Well, Greg, take us to the Atlantic seaboard. What are you seeing out east?
Again, very mild environs. You know, the calendar has said December and January. It's been more or less like October and November. And here we go with just seasonal cold in a system offshore out of the northeast of New England. The wedge of the very cold air up north of the Sioux, and the new weather system across the western Corn Belt has rain again ahead of it. Drought improvement has been noted, would you believe, in the winter season over the central and southern Corn Belt. That system blows on by. The cold air kind of retrogrades on westward. New low pressure into the western Corn Belt. So yeah, a little better feel and significant moisture pattern shaping up not only later this week, but over the next couple of weeks. Warm, dry, high pressure over the southeastern states. Here's the next weather system. Some drought relief on the central and southern plains moves on through that system. A couple of showers in through Florida. New shower and thunderstorm activity west of the Mississippi later in the week.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, folks, we're talking weather with meteorologist Greg Solier. And Greg, over this next week, we're going to see the end of the National Western Stock Show in Denver. Are we also going to see some moisture?
Where it's probably been a bit different look out there around the Denver area in Colorado. That white stuff is called snow, and we've had a couple of healthy systems so far in the winter season, and probably at least 2 more for this week. Nothing major, mind you, but there's been enough to categorically improve the drought pattern across areas of eastern Colorado. You get into the Divide, the Rockies, and westward, we've eradicated it. And a look at the coverage of moisture with additional drought improvement with time over not only the central and southern plains, the rest of the Corn Belt, and another liquid rain event for many eastern and southern areas. Here's the rain snow line. Yeah, we'll add to it through the upper Midwest. More severe weather potential. Mid-Atlantic region down through Texas had some severe weather last week into parts of Kentucky. A few weeks before then into sections of Illinois. And here is the complete coverage of moisture. Mike, in one form or another from Northern California in the Pacific Northwest, more of a dead aim there, we think, with time the next couple of weeks.
Greg, as the month of January comes to a close, are these temperatures going to stay above average across the country?
Yeah, instead of a January feel, it's more or less almost a November feel. Look at this, especially the nighttime lows that have run some 15, 20, 25 degrees above average. Pretty comfortable and certainly easy on the livestock operations, but little or no significant frost or freeze to the ground, so you're tracking a lot of mud around. Above average over the southeastern part of the country. The cloud cover and the moisture, yeah, that's across the west and Pacific Southwest. When's the last time you saw a setup like this with moisture virtually coast to coast? More severe weather here. Propensity for several snowmaking systems for the upper Midwest, and the cold air is forecast to make the move, and the moisture again of great benefit in one form or another, with more drought relief for the west.
Greg, as February gets started, does that Arctic air make a reappearance?
Yeah, it's beginning to reform. We had what we called a stratospheric warming, so we dislodged all the cold during Christmas time, built it back up here over the past few weeks, and here is the next lobe forecast in the beginning part of February into the western Canadian prairie, the western states, the warmth into the eastern states, and you get this compaction of temperatures. You strengthen the jet stream, and you know winter storms are on the move. After a nice reprieve, really, a good part of the Corn Belt locales this season, except for northern areas, will add to the snowpack there, build it southward. Severe weather still over the southeastern part of the country. Some dry time probably needed by then into central and southern sections of California.
Greg, mid-February, what do you see heading into that National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville?
Now, the cold air is present. It's kind of temporarily retrograding, but this wide range of readings expected across the Ohio Valley. Not too far south, again, in warmth to the north is the Arctic air, and that main buckle to jet stream pattern here running across the areas of the Missouri River Valley and points on westward with warmth over the west sets up this particular orientation to the stirring currents of the jet stream. Significant moisture, as we talked about, northern sections of California more so. Into the Pacific Northwest, more snowfall for the northern and central Rockies, and it's an active weather pattern, probably a series of systems with that snow area and snow cover moving farther and farther south, including some additional drought relief for Kansas, Oklahoma, but it comes at a price. More winter severe weather down here. We're talking showers and thunderstorms into parts of the Red River Valley of the south onto the east as well, and significant moisture too for much of the mid-Atlantic region. So we've seen the absence of significant frost and freeze to the ground, significant drought improvement, but now as we get deeper into wintertime, a more typical look and feel.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
So there's talk around town, and the folks are saying this tractor could wind up in a very unusual place. We'll talk about it in Max's Tractor Shed, being brought to you by the folks at Mystic Lubricants. With the help of Mystic Lubes, you can keep your machines working harder for longer, season after season. Mystic Lubricants, made to make it last. Well, when I saw this tractor, I wondered about it. I thought, you know what? It just doesn't look right. What are they doing there? Well, the talk is that it could wind up there, on top of a silo at Otwell, Indiana. There is precedent for this. Some 200 miles or so away from Otwell, many years ago, the late Bill Munyon put an old John Deere way up on top of a silo. He added spotlights, in fact, so you could see it at night. First time I saw it, I was in a plane at about 2,000 feet. I said to the pilot, we need to drop down. I need to see that. Well, Bill's tractor, the old John Deere G, I think it was, eventually fell into the silo. There was no way to get it out. It's still down in there, but another old John Deere has been put in its place. So you folks around Otwell, Indiana, keep an eye out for the old farmall that could wind up there. Well, it doesn't matter what the intended use is going to be. When the equipment moves across the block at Big Iron Auctions, Mark Stock is concerned about getting top dollar. Let's see what's selling in the week ahead at Big Iron.
Well, Max, the machinery market continues to be on the high side. Just as we closed out in 2022, 2023, we're seeing record prices. A Case IH 9150 four-wheel drive tractor located in Inman, Kansas, sells last week for $39,800. There was a John Deere 450J LGP crawler dozer selling in Newcastle, Wyoming for $96,250. In Lawrence, Iowa, a Case IH Steiger 535 quad track, a 2008 year model, sells for $120,000. $129,250. In Polk, Nebraska, a John Deere 6170R mechanical front tractor sells for $137,250. Trucks are selling really high. Here's a 1990 Peterbilt 357 day cab truck selling for $46,500. That's a 1990 model. And a grain trailer, folks, a 2008 Wilson 43-foot grain trailer sells in Minden, Nebraska for $35,000. So the market is still hot. If wanting to sell machinery, now is a great time to do it. In fact, at the Big Iron Sales Conference this past week, we had presenters talk about how equipment market is going to be steady to higher as we go into 2023. We've got some really nice sales coming up next week. So if you're looking for quality ag, construction, transportation, or even livestock and some land, please visit bigiron.com and sullivanauctioneers.com.
Each week, we like to get to know the next generation of American agricultural leaders, and this week, our FFA chapter tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. This week, we're getting to know McKenna Clifton. She's serving as the National FFA Southern Region Vice President. And McKenna, tell us a little bit, what is your territory of the Southern Region?
Right, so all 6 of us officers have the wonderful opportunity to represent all 50 states plus the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. As a Southern Region Vice President, I still have that same role, but I'm excited to represent the great Southern states that I come from.
And that is a wide variety of agriculture in the Southern states. McKenna, what was it that prompted you to get active in FFA in the first place?
Right, so the Southern states are very diverse in agriculture. From my background, I was not based in agriculture. I was a transfer student to my high school. So I remember walking into that classroom on my first day of high school and being a bit overwhelmed, but eventually I got hooked into the home and the community that agriculture offers. And that's really what prompted me to want to take my leadership to the next level. The National FFA organization made me feel at home. It helps me to know that there was a place for me and that I can make a meaningful impact in my communities. So ultimately, hearing the stories of other individuals inspired me to take that to the next level, and I'm honored to represent the members that are the heart of all that we do.
And McKenna, I understand in your history with FFA, you've spent some time educating the public on what it takes to be an agriculturalist, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Working with the Discover Ag Day?
Yes, so Discover Ag Day was probably one of my favorite FFA memories throughout my time as a member. For my supervised agriculture experience, I developed a 2 to 3 day event entitled Discover Ag Day for 4th graders all throughout my county. And this was an opportunity for them to attend an experience where they could gain hands-on experiences with agriculture, whether that was dissecting DNA from a strawberry or learning about the soil particle sizes ranging from super small and microscopic to large, just as they can in a classroom, providing them with those opportunities. And it was just amazing to see how they were excited to learn about agriculture at such a young age, because I didn't have that opportunity.
That is so true, and it's great to be able to provide that opportunity for young folks since agriculture is so important to this country. McKenna Clifton, we wish you the best of luck in your year of service as the Southern Region Vice President.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
It's tough to find good help on a farm or ranch, and for a lot of folks that means turning to our animals for help. Farm dogs are crucial across the country, and the American Farm Bureau recognizes the Farm Dog of the Year each year. This year, the award goes to a farm dog in Kansas who's battled back from some tough circumstances.
Well, we got tough as a 2-year-old. We bonded rather quickly.
She lives to work and she lives for Denny. The more that Denny worked her, the more apparent it was that she was an exceptional dog.
At National Western, she was the reserve champion. This is from 2014 at the Houston Stock Show. That jacket was tough. She made the cover of the magazine, Cover Girl.
She's a cover girl.
This buckle that she won was just not very long before she got hurt. Fortunate to have that one. We were working some heifers out here, and she sustained a severe spinal cord injury, left her paralyzed from the neck down, couldn't move anything. They were unsure what the recovery would be, if there'd be any recovery. Things started to progress in a positive direction. You could just tell every day that she was getting a little better and a little better. She worked up to where she was probably 90% back to normal again.
It was obvious that she still wanted to work, so we come up with jobs for her to do to give her purpose.
Tough has obviously slowed down since the injury, but in her mind, she's still 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and nobody's going to tell her any different. She still loves to work, and so what we're doing out here today, we're working for her now. It's probably what keeps her going, really. I mean, outside of being your companion, her favorite thing in the world to do is what she's doing right here, right now. That's what she's done her whole life, and she's happy when she's doing it. Probably the biggest thing that she teaches is to be happy in your circumstances. I mean, we all have stuff happen that obviously we don't want to happen. And if you understand the journey that she's come through, we can learn to be happy in our circumstances too, whatever they are.
Well, it's great to see Tough back there doing what she loves on the ranch, reminding us to be happy in our circumstances. Good advice as 2023 gets underway. Folks, thanks for tuning in to This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be back next week taking a look at the policy and the markets that impact your bottom line. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you same time, same place, right back here next week.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.